What's up, y'all? Let's talk about what happened today in the market and what really caused it. So what we can see is that stocks were very happy for some reason. And the reason of this happiness had to start with this weekend when Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent announced that trade talks with China and the US went well. And this is huge because China, think about it, is where everything is made, and that's where most of these stuff is imported here to the US. So with the Trump tariffs that we had originally, the 145% tariffs, which were insane, raising costs for everybody didn't like how that was going. So trade talks, and they were positive. Wow. What could that mean? So today we got more details on that, and pretty much what we ended up getting from that is that first, a happy stock market, stocks were up, and then that was ahead of time before Scott Bessent announced more details on what actually happened. So pretty much what happened is President Trump's reciprocal tariff on China will fall to 10%, down from 125%, and that a separate 20% tariff the president imposed over what he describes as China's role in the fentanyl, one of those ways is how you say it, trade will remain. So he pretty much wants China to stop sending the ingredients for fentanyl over here because it's killing a lot of people. And Beijing will cut its retaliatory levies on US goods to 10% from 125%. And this is super temporary, so this will only be for 90 days as these talks continue and they continue negotiating. Some people say this was an L on the US side and a W for China, just because Trump was trying to play hard man and really stand his ground, but China just wasn't budging. They really have leverage here in this fight because they know the play, they know the part that they play in the global economy, and especially with everything being made there, their workforce is highly skilled. There's just a lot of different factors that go into it, so it makes sense on why they weren't budging. And what we've seen today from this news of these trade talks is that there is progress happening, and this progress is huge because if these tariffs are down like over 100% pretty much, because it was 145%. I'm over here looking at this article and it said 125. Maybe I missed some news somewhere along the way, but that's huge. That's a huge drop. So that caused the stock market to really do well today. The NASDAQ was up 4%, and we see a lot of stocks really spiked off of that news. And some people were even saying that the best beneficiaries of this news was small cap stocks. Now, I don't know all of that. I'm just kind of he says, she saying right now. But what we can see here in the market is that the Q's up in QQQ, that's the NASDAQ 100. So the top 100 US companies, I believe not US companies, top 100 companies and non-financials. So that was up 4%, which is a huge move for this index. The VIX plummeted. Wow. Wait, is this just today that it was down 16%? XAU USD, so this is going to be gold tracked in USD, the United States dollar. That's down on that news because I'd actually be interested. Let's put the DXY, and we could see Bitcoin was happy. We went back over 100,000, and maybe people with Bitcoin kind of being above 100,000, maybe some people's taking profits. But wow, this is interesting. So QQQ's up, so NASDAQ 100's up. Bitcoin was kind of up, but it's kind of down, and XAU USD down. So gold and digital gold kind of down on the news. US dollar stocks up on this news. So that's really interesting, and a lot of people are wondering if this is like a pump fake, like if people are just trying so so hard to look for optimism in the market, look for a reason to buy stocks. And there were 6 takeaways economists took from this. And the first one was that this is a bigger than expected U-turn because many market watchers were surprised by how much the US and China agreed to cut tariffs. They didn't expect this. But another takeaway is that this trade war is way far from over because the truce only lasts 90 days. However, it could take much longer to reach a full trade agreement. And who really knows which way this could go? Maybe we get another 90-day extension to pause or continue holding where we're at. But a lot of people think it's unlikely that tariffs will go anywhere back to where they were. But honestly, you never know. Trump is a wild card. We know that from his book, The Art of a Deal, which I actually I haven't read it, but I listened to the audiobook for the first time this year, just with everything happening. And there are a lot of similarities to how everything is portrayed in that book versus how action is being taken right now. Another takeaway is that the US hasn't won concessions from Beijing yet, so it'll be interesting to see whether China is willing to offer anything substantive to these talks. But it can be seen that they'll feel under a huge amount of pressure to do so. So, and these are what economists are saying, so I'm just kind of sharing those details with you. The US will still need to buy, will still end up buying less Chinese stuff just because with an effective rate of 40% on these tariffs, Chinese exports to the US are likely to fall by up to 1/3. And these are estimates are from Williams at Capital Economics, while exports would have fallen far more with tariffs above 100%. This will still mark a dramatic decline in trade between the two largest economies because everybody thought the baseline was 10%. We're pretty much 3 times that right now because 10, 20, 30, right? And then fentanyl tariffs are now in focus, so everybody's going to be watching what's happening with this low-hanging fruit because U.S. overdose crisis from this fentanyl is an issue that Americans are facing with right now, and especially those more lower poor class and homeless people. A lot of those people are facing these fentanyl problems with these drug uses, and the Sell America trade is in question because European stocks have outshone US markets this year, particularly because of concern about the trade war's impact on US companies. De-escalation could help close the gap, wrote analysts at Deutsche Bank, saying that the Geneva deal is likely to be a bigger positive driver for US equities than European equities, which have been performing well. And that's probably why we seen such optimism today in the markets. Oh, you weren't even able to see gold earlier, so let me move gold up here. Let's move gold over here so you can just see what was going on with this. Gold was also down. It actually looked very similar to how, there we go, kind of similar to how Bitcoin was moving. And it's funny because gold and then Bitcoin's like digital gold, so all of that was super interesting to watch. Apple did really well on that news coming out. Let's see where Apple ended up today and how much it was up. Yeah, so up 6.31% on Apple. It's down a little bit, maybe taking a breather after hours, but that's a huge move for Apple stock. A lot of optimism going on today from this market. There's not a lot of... It's still pretty cloudy in the journey ahead, but one thing for certain is that there's progress happening, and this progress is huge and can't be completely discounted. Now, something that was discounted that I think we should mention is the CME Fed Watch tool dropping its prediction for a Fed cut. So yeah, I believe this was at 17% for a cut. Now that dropped down to 11.6%. I believe it went even lower. So it's pretty much set in stone that here pretty soon in June, unless we get some scary data that comes out pretty soon, that unless anything scary comes out, we get some super bad data, like we got CPI data come out tomorrow. We'll look at the economic calendar here in a bit, but as long as no scary data comes out and everything keeps on coming in pretty strong, there's not much tempting the Fed to want to cut rates, if you get my drift here. So the next cut is in 36 days, 16 hours, 10 minutes, and 35 seconds. So let's look at the July cut. Where are we expecting? Oh wow, almost 60% chance or prediction chance that they still keep rates in July the exact same. What about September? All right, September is pricing at about 0.5% that we cut about 25 basis points or 1/4% from where we're at on the federal funds effective rate. So all of this is interesting. And then the further out, the more blurry it gets. So then 40% chance is the highest expectation of cut. So that's 225 basis point cuts, so 0.5%. And then by December, that ends us out to, wow, only 2 cuts is where they're expecting us to end out the year. Very, 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 very interesting. Now, I just lost a feed. Let me just get loaded back up. But while we're doing that, let's just continue looking at the market. So I'm wondering how long this stuff holds, because this could be overblown, assuming that the deal doesn't work out well. Because what if war breaks out, or what if a further meeting with China doesn't go well? Maybe China knows that or thinks, I don't know, right? I don't know. But let's think that somebody on one of the ends of the table think they have much larger pants than the other. So they get a little bit more bold, and that causes the other person to react a little bit more uncertain than everybody's guessing. And then everybody was talking about us being at a near top in the market, here in the short term at least. So we were right at that point, and then it's like, wow, the trade talks came out right as everybody's starting to expect another downturn in the markets, another leg down. Now, Kevin Hassett, director of the National Economic Council, says that shelves will be fully stocked for Christmas, which would be good for jobs, because think about it, if businesses are expecting demand to be well, they're expecting to be loading up on inventory, and that creates a lot of jobs or shipments, truckers, people unloading, loading stuff up, unboxing stuff, ordering inventory, serving these goods and services to customers, then customers buying it. So that causes a lot of money to circulate through the economy. So that's all great news and looking pretty positive. Hassett said even with higher tariffs that shoppers wouldn't have seen empty shelves until the end of summer. Now, there's smooth selling with all the way through until Christmas with this cut. So Hassett also says that the U.S. is rebooting relationships with China. Kevin Hassett, director of National Economic Council, said the deal with China lower tariffs for the next 90 days was a way to fix things between the two countries. We're the relationship, said Hassett in a CNBC interview, and he expects broader deal in 90 days to happen. We have lots of time to make that happen. So all of that's up in the air. We don't really know which way we're going, because like I said, Trump is a wild card. That man could come out tomorrow and completely flip crap and change everything, and then it's another leg down in the markets. So I don't know. Let's put this on the 4-hour chart, and just maybe even on the day chart, and just kind of see where we're at. And maybe not on Apple. Let's look at QQQ. Let's look at that. A lot of people like looking at the S&P 500. Come on, Weeble. You can do it. You can load. Come on. We made it through the whole video, man. Well, we are all witnesses. Hey, there we go. All right. Yeah, maybe let's do the week chart. I hope we got time. There we go. So we're back over 500 on the NASDAQ 100. Back over 500. And if you can see, like right here, we're at a main point, maybe up to like 510. That's a big line of resistance, honestly. It's like right at 510. Let's put a line. And let's just see what happens, because if we break through this line, I mean, we could be testing new highs all over again. You never know where we could go, as long as the news is positive. But like we were talking about earlier, we got the economic calendar coming out. We got CPI data tomorrow, and the economic calendar is just endless. CPI is kind of less of a concern these days because all eyes are on tariffs and Trump and China and all of that stuff. So inflation's kind of been out of the mix. And yeah, some say that tariffs are inflation inducing, they cause inflation, but all of that's up to how negotiations go with all of these different countries. And we got the 10% baseline with all countries, and then the 10% with China plus the 20% fentanyl tariff. So effective tariff 30%, which I think earlier it even said 40%. So I don't know. We're going to be watching that, but we got a lot of Fed speak this week. Wednesday is going to be a good watch. Everybody's going to be watching the CPI data tomorrow, which you can see the expectations. Core CPI's median forecast is 0.3%, which is up from 0.1%. So that's quite the increase. But like I said, people might kind of blow this over, especially if this were because of frontlining these tariffs when they came out. Then we got the Fed speakers coming out, and then Thursday is a busy day because we got PPI, we got US retail sales, 7. We got initial jobless claims. This one's going to be huge. We're expecting initial jobless claims to kind of come in lower than the previous of 228K down to 226K. Fed Chair Jerome Powell speech at 8:40 a.m. This is going to be an interesting day. Home builder confidence. We're going to hear from home builders and what they're thinking. We're going to get business inventories. This is a busy week. Housing starts. So how many projects are actually starting? And then building permits. How many projects are planning on starting? So they're trying to get everything in line, get their permits in order so they could start. And then consumer sentiment. Wow. So this is an interesting week, y'all. So far, a lot of optimism, a lot of good news, a lot of hope at the end of the tunnel. But who knows how long that keeps lasting. I'll try my best to keep on covering it. I'd like to do this every single day and see if I could get a little bit better at it, because as you can see, I'm still pretty much a rookie at doing this, and maybe need a better setup so my computer's a little faster. But I think this was good, and I think we can learn a lot together. So y'all be on the lookout. I'll keep on learning, and I'll try my best to keep on updating, and together we grow. Y'all have a good one.